Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pierce. This is a Ukraine war news update, the second part thereof for, I don't know, I've done some breaking news updates, I don't know where I'm at. Anyway, it's the 7th of October, that much I know for sure, at least it is where I am right now, 2025 too. This is a military aid video. We're going to look first at aid going to Ukraine, and I've done several videos on this, so I don't really need to talk about this too much more, other than it's looking like Tomahawk missiles are going to wend their way to Ukraine in some quantity to be able to be used in some way. That's the indications we are getting. This has been on, off, on, off, on, off. There have been articles written this week saying they're definitely not going. Yes, they are. We're not sure. Zelensky's asked for them. Trump has most recently said, I've sort of made a decision pretty much. If you consider, yeah, I think I want to find out what they're doing with them, you know, where they're sending them. I guess I have to ask that question. Then we heard that the MP Chernev, Ukrainian MP, said Ukraine will first be given several Tomahawk missiles, but they will not be allowed to hit Russia with them right away, because it's important to find out Putin's reaction. If there's no reaction, strikes on the Russian border are possible. If Putin does not go to negotiations, the radius of destruction will be increased, as will the supply of missiles to Ukraine. So that sounds like they'll be able to hit outside of occupied territories if they hit sensible things. And I presume they'd go on to hit sensible things such as the Yellow drone production facility in Tatarstan. That's the single most important thing that Ukraine hits at the moment. So it looks like they're going to get them, but it's also really frustrating that they have given Russia the off-ramp for these, if you like, the permission to put a particular reaction in place. That means that the US will not supply them going forward. There's a ridiculous advertising of the red lines here. It's just really, really bizarre thing to say in public. Anyway, that's that. Now, I was speaking to Pierre actually this morning. I do a lot of speaking to Pierre at the moment. He was saying, there's a chap I've gone around Ukraine with. I've interviewed him previously on this channel, and he's a bit of a legend. He reminded me about the ERAM, the missile that the Ukrainians are going to get hold of, that allied nations have bought on behalf of Ukraine from the US, and it's a newly created weapon that has been created specifically for Ukraine. And he put two and two together, because I was thinking, there was this declaration the other day that the Americans had admitted that they were going to give the Ukrainians greater satellite intel support with regard to targeting deeper into Russia. And then you saw this Tomahawk news come through. And I think those two things were connected. That was my initial claim. But actually might also be connected to this. It might not be either or. And that's the ERAM. So if you remember, the US announced that they were to deliver these air-delivered munitions. Now, this would have been something that was arranged before Trump got into power, because the Americans were producing, they were designing and manufacturing these on behalf of Ukraine. So this has taken some time. It was announced, something like this was announced back in March last year, if I remember correctly, 2024, something like that. They're going to start putting this together, and then it was then announced in August of this year that the State Department had made a determination approving a possible foreign military sale to the government of Ukraine. So Ukraine buying these directly, although I think it's funded by others. Air-delivered munitions and related equipment for an estimated cost of $825 million. The government of Ukraine is requested to buy up to 3,350 extended range attack munitions. These are slightly different from ERAM, where the munition is missile, which is the SM-6 that gets fired out of the Typhon system, which is the same as the Tomahawk system. So make sure that when you're researching the ERAM, that you're looking at the right ERAM. It's annoyingly like the same acronym, but can actually mean two different things. These are extended range attack munition missiles rather than the extended range attack missile I think that's a distinction. And 3,350 embedded global positioning systems, so GPS inertial navigation systems, with selective availability anti-spoofing modules, Y code or M code. The following non-MDE items will be included: missile containers, stoker pylons, component parts and support equipment, spare parts, consumables, accessories, repair, etc., etc., etc. So you're going to get a bunch of these missiles to fire at the Ukrainians. So what are the capabilities of these missiles? Let's remind ourselves, because they're getting 3,350 of them, and they're starting to come this month. These are being produced at about 1,000 a year, so don't expect them. These aren't stockpiles that already exist. This is a new munition that's been designed for the Ukrainians. Planned production volume 1,000 a year. They are air to earth, so they get fired by planes, fighter jets, fighter bombers. They're American. They have a speed of 760 kilometers an hour. Precision is 50%, 10 meters from the target, so they've got a circle error probable of 10 meters. They weigh 220 plus kilograms, 460 plus kilometers of range, and that is dependent on how high you drop them, right? So it drops low altitude, it's a couple of 100 kilometers, high altitude 460. Okay, so it's a new generation air-launched precision-guided standoff missile developed by the US, designed for use against high-value fixed or mobile targets, so it can hit mobile targets. Iran was conceived to meet urgent operational need of allied air forces, particularly Ukraine's, by providing a long-range, cost-effective strike capability as rapidly producible in large numbers. The images and visual representations are conceptual in nature and are based on projected configuration, so it might not be exactly what it can do and exactly what it looks like. So the ERAM is a standoff cruise missile developed by the US. Okay, let's go and look actually down at the variants then. There are no variants, so it's one size fits all. But that may eventually come. I guess it depends what the needs are and the feedback for their use. Compact winged missile featuring a streamlined fuselage optimized for high subsonic flight. Airframe is constructed with lightweight composite materials to reduce mass while maintaining structural integrities. Folding wings and tail fins deploy after release to enhance lift and stability, allowing efficient cruise at extended distances. The missile is equipped with hardpoints compatible with standard NATO aircraft pylons, particularly those used on F-16s and potentially other fourth generation fighters. The design emphasizes maneuverability, key components are modular, and the missile is engineered for assembly on commercial production lines and using both military grade and commercially available components. Its aerodynamic profile is intended to minimize radar signature and maximize range under low altitude or high altitude flight profiles. Okay, so the warhead is a unitary high explosive warhead weighing approximately 227 kilograms. The warhead is designed to penetrate and destroy hardened or semi-hardened targets such as bunkers, air defense radar, supply depots, and command centers. The explosive charge is configured for optimized terminal effects, ensuring destruction of high-value fixed assets without a single missile. There is also there is also potential for future warhead variants to support area denial or anti-personnel effects, though no such configurations have yet been fielded. So this is really significant because there's an awful lot of talk about, and okay, so the range is not nearly what's required for, say, hitting Yellow Booga, but this can do some serious damage somewhat into Russian territory. And we've been talking about Tomahawks and Flamingos, but actually starting to get a whole bunch of these will be very, very useful for the Ukrainians. And that, I think, is happening this month. So that's why I'm going to focus a little bit more on the details here. So it utilizes a compact turbojet or turbofan engine capable of sustaining high subsonic cruise speeds of around 460 miles an hour, approximately Mach 0.6. The propulsion choice balances range, endurance, and cost, enabling the missile to achieve ranges between 240 kilometers, so that's when it's dropped at a low altitude, and 460 kilometers when it's released at a high altitude. Launch from high altitude can significantly extend the operational radius. So you should be able to drop these from a high altitude all the time because you'll be far enough behind the Ukrainian border to be safe to use these. So I can't imagine they particularly need to drop them at low altitude. The engine is believed to be, no, it's not too important. What else do we have? Guidance systems, so GPS supported by inertial navigation as a fallback if GPS is jammed. Hardened against guidance packages hardened against jamming and electronic warfare threats, ensuring accurate strike capability even in contested electromagnetic environments. While not yet confirmed, the system likely includes terrain contour matching, TERCOM, or image-based terminal guidance options to improve terminal accuracy in highly defended or urban areas. So there's loads of electronic warfare it can use on board sensoring, so it doesn't have to communicate with anywhere else, and it just gets to where it wants to go to. It's designed to deliver precision strike capability with CEP of 10 meters, which is pretty decent at that range. It can be used from F-16. I guess the Ukrainians, they're pretty used to getting their older airframes to be able to fire a whole range of things, so that may come as well. Low cost, I don't know what the cost is. I'd like to know that. So you can see all the details there. Air launched and all that. Yeah, nowhere does it say the cost. But you can work it out. Well, actually, you can't really work it out because that package that they bought includes all this other stuff that aren't just the missiles. Yeah, just doing a quick search here. It says anywhere between $30,000 and $246,000 a unit. So that's quite a range. If it's anywhere near 30,000, that'd be absolutely phenomenal. I mean, the guided glide bombs that the Ukrainians are producing, they're somewhere around that kind of price point, 25,000. So this is like a cruise missile. I don't think it'd be that. So, but still, that's pretty all right for effectively a cruise missile. So watch out for these, and as mentioned, they should be getting these in October. I'm pretty sure they're due to get a whole not a massive load of them, but some of them already. Delivery schedule, initial batch starting in October. First major delivery, 840. Here we go. So this came 5th of September. That doesn't say there. Other than large scale deliveries not expected until late 2026. So 840 are scheduled for delivery by the end of October 2026. That's not a huge amount, but still, that is going to help. And if they can start getting there now, that'd be brilliant. If they're looking at 1,000 per year, then that's all, give or take, 90 a month or something like that. 80 to 90 a month. That'd be super useful, what would that work out to? So a couple of those a day, using them with all their other drones and missiles, you could start seeing air bases get hit with these sorts of weapons. So anyway, I think that's really good news, and we need to bear that one in mind, because I'd kind of forgotten about ERAM, and even though I reported it fairly recently. Anyway, the US and the EU have requested Greece transfers 25 Mirage 2000-5 fighters to Ukraine. Most of the fighters are already decommissioned and can be used for spare parts. Greece is currently in the process of decommissioning the fighters due to their obsolescence, and that is coming from Ekaterinini, so that's a Greek source there. Euromaidan Press says the Greek Prime Minister Mitsotakis said military protection should be provided beyond NATO's eastern flank. Greece blocks NATO allies from buying its 25 Mirage fighters for Ukraine, offers a 60-year-old howitzers instead. So the Mirage has become obsolete in 2027 anyway, so I'm not quite sure what's actually going to happen with those Mirages, but it looks like he's blocked them from going, the Greek Prime Minister. Not quite sure why. Now, according to citations from the Greek Ministry of Defence, as part of a new aid package Greece will transfer to Ukraine, heavy self-propelled guns and their ammunition. Now, all of this comes as it is, as far as I understand it. So whatever state it's in, that's how Ukraine will get it. These won't be refurbed like we'd seen previously with, say, Italian self-propelled howitzers and then American stuff and whatnot. I think this is like, you want it, here it is. 60 M110A2 203mm self-propelled guns, 150,000 shells that would be fireable from them, several thousand 70mm and 127mm Zuni MLRS shells, so for multiple launch rocket systems. And those Zuni shells, I think they're the ones that can be fired from helicopters and whatnot. I think they are. Of these 150,000 203mm shells, 50,000 are high explosive fragmentation shells, 40,000 extended range shells, and 60,000 cluster munitions as well. So that's pretty good news if they can get all of that. I don't know that there is anything else. So it's mainly those howitzers and shells to go with them, but that'd be super useful, of course. Slovakia has announced a military aid package for Ukraine. So Greece wasn't expecting that, and then Slovakia. Now, Slovakia is particularly interesting because, of course, Robert Fico has been very vocal in his desires not for military aid to go from Slovakia. So this is the first one since Fico's return. Slovakia pledged engineering and demining support. A memorandum was signed at the Defence Forum in Kiev. Deputy Prime Minister Robert Kalinak says talks will continue on expanding defence cooperation. At the start of the war, the Slovak government was one of the first in Europe to provide Ukraine with significant military aid. In fact, they were at the top of the charts for ages, and they've kind of dropped down since. However, after Robert Fico returned to power, says Nexter, direct state support stopped and former officials came under scrutiny and investigation. So remember, I think the former defence minister was investigated for arms shipments to Ukraine. At the same time, defence cooperation has not formally been cut off. So Fico's government sees it as hypocritical to ban Slovakian companies from selling arms to Ukraine. Commercial supplies continue. I don't quite understand that, because I think it is hypocritical of Slovakia to do this, to say we do not support giving aid to Ukraine. It's morally wrong for us to give aid to Ukraine, but it's somehow morally right for us to sell aid to Ukraine. It's kind of similar to the American position, actually, to be perfectly honest. I find that really problematic. As in, it's slightly different from the American position, because even Trump hasn't said it is not morally wrong for us to give assistance to Ukraine. He's whereas Fico has, he's very much been in that train of thought. Now, then there is the Czech Republic just next door, and Czech President Petr Pavel, in light of Babiš, the new leader in Czechia from the ANO party, who has previously said, we're going to stop the Czech initiative getting artillery ammunition to Ukraine. Petr Pavel, former NATO commander himself, or NATO officer, said stopping the initiative to supply ammunition to Ukraine will harm, first of all, the Czech Republic, actually. Quote, if we somehow reduce or even stop this support, we will harm, first of all, ourselves. But stopping the support will also negatively affect Ukraine, where many more people will die. So I don't know if he means from a strategic point of view or from an economic point of view, or both. So then the Euromaidan press reports that the Czech election winner, Babiš, won't derail ammunition pipeline to Ukraine, according to Brussels. The European Commission dismissed concerns that Andrej Babiš's electoral victory could disrupt the Czech-led initiative that has already supplied over 1 million artillery shells to Ukraine. So that is looking like slightly better news for Ukraine coming from Slovakia. Now, Ukrainian defense companies will launch a new joint set of production projects in Denmark. There's been this memorandum of understanding signed between the two countries, providing for Ukrainian defense companies to launch production in Denmark. So this is about Denmark spending money, but actually trying to get some of that money to be spent within Denmark. It's also safer for Ukraine to build stuff in Denmark than it is in the in Ukraine. Now, what was it I was listening to this morning? Oh my goodness. Now, it was this. I posted this. I'm pretty sure I posted this on the channel community space. Honestly, this is really interesting. If you're not interested in UK politics, the first bit about our defense secretary, John Healey, his path through politics, I find that interesting, but you might want to skip on to that kind of the Ukraine stuff. This was a really good interview, and I've got a lot of time for John Healey, but he says something about drone production facilities being hit, and I think this is really important because it's a little. Here it is. Okay, so let's listen to what he says.
Huge courage of their military. It's the determination of their civilian population. I visited a drone factory which had been bombed 5 times this year.
Just that little throwaway comment. Do you remember every morning I'm saying Ukraine is not hitting Russia as much as I thought they would? That we're not hearing about all the successful Russian hits on Ukraine. There will be industrial military complex facilities being hit routinely. He said, I visited a drone factory that had been hit 5 times this year. 5 times this year. Weapons production in Ukraine is exceptionally vulnerable. And there is a need not only for donor countries to actually see some of those tax dollars or tax euros that they're sending to Ukraine actually find a return on investment domestically, not just strategically in terms of the war and political and military outcomes, but actually in terms of generating economic stimulus in the country. So spending that money in Denmark is a good use of that Danish money, so the Danes would say. And actually, if a single drone manufacturing facility has been hit 5 times this year, then there's a big case for building in Denmark or outside of Ukraine. So anyway, this memorandum of understanding provides Ukrainian defense companies the ability to launch production in Denmark, creating joint capacities, allowing them to exchange technologies. And what else do we have? Joint manufacturing. Yeah, so that's that. So that's really good news. Hopefully they can sort things out quickly, because Ukraine needs as much stuff as they can get, and they need it now. Now, the Dutch Ministry of Defence has said that the Estonian autonomous ground systems manufacturer Milrem Robotics has signed a contract with the Netherlands to supply 150 ground systems to Ukraine. So again, the Dutch coming up with a lot of the goods. They really are, I think, doing a good job, the Dutch, in supporting Ukraine. Interesting, I was seeing that Japan are looking at Themis, which is a heavy system. It's already in Ukraine, actually, the Themis. They've lost some of these. These were worth, I think, sort of $50,000 plus. These are a pretty substantial bit of kit. They can be used for a number of different jobs. Your heavier, I think, maybe slightly longer range, more robust jobs. So Japan was just looking at both a Themis and a Rheinmetall German drone, and they could both do very different things. And I don't know whether they're looking at taking them both on, but Themis seems to be a quite successful Estonian, bit of an Estonian success story maybe. But yeah, that's really good news there. In fact, here we've got no reports talking about it. They will deliver over 150 Themis unmanned ground vehicles to Ukraine in a Netherlands-led defence initiative. Ukrainian crews will receive training from Milrem Robotics. The new vehicles add to the 15 Themis units already active in Ukraine since 2022. I don't think there's still 15, or at least if they only receive 15, there's definitely not 15 now, because a bunch of those have ended up on Andrew Perpetua's loss list, and I remember, mentioning those. Now, European defence manufacturer Thales, French concern, although they make the NLAW ATGM's anti-tank guided missile systems in Belfast, so that they've got fingers in a lot of European pies. But Thales has developed a compact mini missile to help counter Shahed type drones, attack drones. The FZ-123 warhead for the 70mm missile. So again, we're talking about 70mm missiles here, and munitions, is filled with thousands of tiny steel pellets and nearly 1 kilogram charge. A new system is already being deployed in Ukraine. So this is a fantastic development, because Shahed drones are a nightmare. They're an absolute freaking nightmare. And if you can't blow up Yellow Booga and you can't stop them manufacturing and delivering those drones, then you've got to get much better at shooting them down. At the moment, those drones, they've been sort of redesigned. Someone was saying this morning, the chassis, the Russians have taken the Iranian chassis to the Shahed drone, and they've kind of tinkered with it, so now it can withstand much more G-force, and that's why it's doing these terminal dives at the moment that are much more difficult for air defense to shoot down, obviously moving more quickly, etc. So these Shahed attacks are getting worse and worse, and Ukraine needs to come up with all of the myriad ways that they possibly can to intercept these drones, from electronic warfare to mobile defense units to target acquisition to flying helicopters and planes, having manpads and Gepards and Skynets and heavy Browning machine guns on the back of trucks and whatever. They just need them all, need them to work well. Interceptor drones, of course. Now, talking about developing new tech here, you can see somebody says Europe will receive a new weapon against Russian drones. Swedish company Nordic Air Defence has developed the Kreuger 100, a low-cost mini missile that shoots down drones in the sky. So actually somewhat similar to what we've just seen, except these are against smaller drones by the looks of it. Against your sort of Mavics and FPV drones. Low-cost mini missile that shoots down drones in the sky is electric, kinetic, and safe for cities. Wow, so this is something that could be used around, say, Kramatorsk. You could drive around there. There've just been fiber optic drones used around there. You could drive around using these things. I mean, this is what Ukraine just needs plenty of. This kind of development, these kind of pieces of kit, and lots of them. So a bit more detail here. Startup Swedish Nordic Air Defence has developed a high-speed drone interceptor, the Kreuger 100, which could seriously reduce the cost of fighting Russia and their Shahed. Well, this mentions Shahed drones. I don't know if they could get that high. It was developed due to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. They are available in two variants, a handheld launcher and a ground station equipped with infrared UAV tracking system. It is based on artificial intelligence that tracks the target even in light, cloudy weather. The Kreuger 100 reaches 270 kilometers. Wow. 270 kilometers an hour. Sorry, doing way too much talking. And presumably can intercept drones at a height of 2,000 meters. So I don't know how useful that would be against Shahed, unless the Shahed was flying pretty low and was quite close, because quite often Shaheds are now flying at sort of 4,000 meters and then doing these dives and whatnot, or they're mixing it up, but it may well be usable against Shaheds as well as smaller drones. But that looks pretty cool. Then talking about drone interception technology, there's a great thread here by Roy. It's quite technical, quite long, where he's dipping into Serhiy Stenenko, who reviews the state of development of much hyped anti-drone technology and microwave weapons and things that will kind of drop swarms of drones. So quite technical, not going to go into all of the details here, but you can go and find him. He's called Roy, Grandpa Roy 2 on Twitter, and I follow him and dip into him quite frequently. We're just going to go to the conclusion at the end, because it tells us all we need to know. To summarize, electromagnetic weapons are undoubtedly a promising direction. 2, one should not expect great range and power, but the weapon is excellent for drone defense. 3, the size is large and the device is energy intensive. 4, nothing serial, practical, or available for purchase is produced worldwide, despite decades of development. So that's where a lot of the thread goes. It's like, well, the British are doing this, but we don't know much about it. China's doing this, and this is what we think, and the US has done this one, blah, blah, blah. But none of them appear to be available or mass produced. There is no there's no reliable information about the characteristics and capabilities of these global developments. Not really. Good stuff. I mean, we saw the other day. Oh, did we? Did I show this to you? I'm not sure that I Oh, yeah, I think I did actually. So there's a whole bunch of drones in the air, and a bunch of them fell out of the air because an American microwave technology made them all fall down. I'm surprised it's not on this thread, but I showed you that video. So, these will be very useful when they're properly developed, because drones are only going to get more and more swarmy and more autonomous. And so you are going to need something that can just make drones fall out of the sky using something like microwave technology. Now, Ukraine and the US are preparing an agreement. We've heard about this previously on the exchange of drone technologies. This might help Ukraine buy kit off the US. For example, that big $825 million purchase of the Iran missiles. You can imagine that they say, look, we want to buy this off you, we'll give you this tech, we'll give you these drones or whatever. There's that kind of swapping going on I think, where it's not just one way buying off the US. The US is going to be buying tech and equipment off Ukraine, because Ukraine are much further ahead of the US in terms of the application of their drone tech, their drone tactics, the drone equipment, so on and so forth, and all the counter technology too. Well, some counter technology too, I would have thought. This will be the first time that Ukraine will supply military technology to the US and not the other way around. And then we hear that the US government shutdown due to lack of consensus on a budget has not affected military aid to Ukraine. So that's coming from the Foreign Ministry spokesperson, Hiori Tikhi. He was commenting on a report from the Telegraph, and I mentioned that, about concerns about the suspension of aid due to the government shutdown. And then finally, for this section, Euroactiv reports a drop in European support for higher defence spending despite rising Russian provocations. A polling Europe survey shows 67% back increased budgets on defence, down from 74% in April 2024. Support varies by region: 76% in Central and Eastern Europe, 59% in the South, peaks in Poland at 86%. Right. I wouldn't be too worried about this, because actually that's pretty good. You're not often going to get people saying we advocate for greater spending on defence when there are all of these pressures on social housing, general welfare, education, healthcare, so on and so forth. For that still to be 67% support for increased budgets for defence, I think is not too much to worry about, even though, yeah, Russian provocations are ramping up. And that is a 7% drop from previously in April 2024. It's just not too much of a problem, I don't think. Okay, Zelensky has mentioned that the Ukrainian potential in the production of drones and missiles alone next year will be $35 billion. So they could produce, I presume that means $35 billion worth of drones and missiles alone. On the front, more than 40% of the weapons used are weapons produced in Ukraine or with Ukraine. The task by the end of the year is to have at least 50% of the weapons on the front be Ukrainian. The challenge, of course, is building them in Ukraine and keeping those facilities safe. Now, we're hearing about Neptunes quite a bit today. First of all, there was a claim from the Ukrainian Navy that Neptunes have hit the enemy more than 50 times last year, but they're not always reported. And this is something that we've often speculated on, which is like, I wonder what hit that. Russians claim that missile Neptunes were used, or they often claim that, air raid alerts over Crimea, we think Storm Shadow's being used, or we think Neptune's being used, or whatever. And often I will dismiss them for kind of over panicking about, quite what is being sent. But clearly missiles are used, and 50 times last year. That's, one in 7 days, I guess, you'll be seeing missiles used. So once a week, Neptune missiles are used, something like that. Well, not only do we hear that, but a new version of the Neptune was revealed today. So a new Ukrainian missile was demonstrated, or I don't think it was properly demonstrated. It was on demonstration, as in you can look at it. It appears to be a modified Neptune missile. And some are saying it's the RK-360L or the Neptune D cruise missile. Bit more information on this. No report says new photos of Ukraine's upgraded Neptune D cruise missile reveals several design changes. External fuel tanks appear to extend its range to around 1,000 kilometers, while a new satellite antenna system likely improves guidance and protection against jamming. I don't know where he's got that information from. Nonetheless, you can assume that this is a better version of the missile as it previously was. So we might be seeing this get used. Scaled production has increased. We might get to see them being used more than once a week, quite regularly. I can add this to the ERAMs and the Flamingos and the Petclos, because actually in this at this demonstration, at this exhibition, whatever it was, the Petclo missile drone was also on show, which is, I think, this silver one there, and other weapons too. Naval drone, the Magura V5, equipped with the R-73 air-to-air missiles used from the surface, obviously there. So a number of these weapons exist, don't they? You get the Lyuti drone and the FP1 drone, but then you've got the FP2 missile that apparently they're producing at scale, and the FP5 Flamingo that they're supposedly at 2, maybe even 3 a day. Hoping to get to 7 a day by end of October, by end of the year, by 2026, depending on who you listen to. Petclo, as mentioned, even here still of the Trembita, which is this kind of old school V1 type technology drone that's kind of built by hobbyists, but now I think it's been scaled. But I haven't heard much about that. And then all, as mentioned, ERAM, Tomahawks, Storm Shadows, Scalp PGs, those I guess are still around to some degree. So the Ukrainians are getting more and a greater range of distance weapons, and that can only be a good thing for them. So here is the evolution of the Neptune. This is the 2019 version at the top there, the R360. Then it's the Neptune missile from a Zabroya video in August 2025. So you can see it's slightly different there. The fins are larger, the dorsal fins there, and then the tail fins, slightly different configuration. And then this new version, the Neptune D, on display to the Lithuanian delegation. There are other people in town today, it appears. Then we hear news about the Bogdana self-propelled gun, although it's not just a self-propelled, it's a towed version as well. Production stats. We'd understood that the Bogdana was being made, and now we're on a 4.0 iteration of this, was being made, goodness me, it's even 5.0 there, was being made to the tune of 40 a month, certainly over 30 a month, and they were looking to just continue increasing that. Actually, it looks like that number includes both the towed and self-propelled versions. So according to Ukrainian President Zelensky, the country has reached a monthly production rate of 40 Bogdana family 155mm artillery pieces. Unlike many are claiming, this number includes both the towed and the self-propelled systems. Currently, there seem to be 3 models of the self-propelled variant in production: the Model 3.2, 4.0 and 5.0, and one towed variant based on the 2A36 carriage, the 2P22 Bogdana BG. I've also included, says Jeff here, my current production estimates and users list for the Bogdana family. Nonetheless, 40 of this family being produced a month is, I would wager, beyond replacement rates. In other words, they are going to be essentially, accumulating more and more of these Bogdanas. I don't think they're losing. I presume they're making around 30 of the SPGs a month. And I don't think they'll be losing one a day. So you're going to see more and more of these used. And then eventually you'll start seeing these basically take up most of the towed howitzer losses that you'll see as they kind of phase out all the other, or as all the other kit they have gets attrited away. The AS-90s the UK have provided, the AHS Crabs that the Polish have provided, then you've got the Caesars, the Archers, and whatnot. Now, whether they'll continue getting those, I don't know. We shall see. Sudzana too, and some of these other ones. Now, amid continuous Russian strikes on energy infrastructure, Ukraine has developed... Oh, and by the way, we are hearing that the Czechs are providing as part of that package. I was talking about a package from Czechia, wasn't I? It said demining was part of that, and that I think they're giving 5. Is it Bazema, the demining machine? I think is it remote controlled? Anyway, it's a pretty big bit of kit. They've given a bunch of those previously, the Slovaks, but they're going to give more of them as part of their aid package. Amid continuous Russian strikes on energy infrastructure, Ukraine has developed a remote-controlled firefighting robot to help to keep rescue teams safe, according to Oboronka. The Tengu 5 robotic complex can extinguish blazes at chemical plants, oil and gas wells, ammunition and chemical storage facilities. It's a tracked robot, as you can see there in the images, that pulls water hoses behind it and uses cameras with thermal imaging to navigate through smoke and flames at sites where explosions, toxic fumes or combat make human presence impossible. The prototype currently awaits being tested before deployment near critical infrastructure. Its key characteristics are operates remotely up to 1 kilometer from rescue crews, maximum speed of 10 kilometers an hour, armored platform with a Stanag 4569 level 1 protection, shrapnel resistance, Streammaster 2 water projection monitor, and camera system with 30 times optical zoom and thermal imaging, 2.2 litre diesel engine, space for evacuation stretchers, and an optional Morok 5 electronic warfare system. Wow. So that's good. And then another such machine, another massive UGV unmanned ground vehicle. So the Ukrainian MAL evac UGV for rapid evacuation of critical casualties was presented at the IT Arena conference in Lviv. A steel armored compartment protects the soldier. Wouldn't want to project him. Protects him from fragments, and a gas engine provides a 70 kilometer an hour speed to minimize time spent within FPV range. Wow, so that thing can move. Impressive. Ukraine's first separate medical battalion has developed its own UGV called the MAL for Kazovac. The vehicle is built on an ATV chassis and has a gas engine, a petrol engine, unlike the battery power of other UGVs of this size. This allows speeds of up to 70 kilometers an hour on flat terrain. The 4x4 UGV has a 200 kilogram capacity, and the compartment interior has a light and intercom communication with the base station. So interesting there. It looks like a big coffin on wheels, but hopefully it's not to bring back dead, but the wounded and the dead. It can, I guess, as well. Someone has to put them on in there, don't they? Okay, now we're going to go to some Russian elements of what's going on. We have Zelensky saying it's the fourth year of the full-scale war, and Russia continues to receive components for weapons. During the massive combined strike, Russia used 549 weapons containing 102,789 foreign-made components. US, China and Taiwan, UK, Germany, Switzerland, Japan, South Korea and the Netherlands all had components in the weapons used against Ukraine. The launched strike drones contained approximately 100,688 foreign components, and Iskander's about 1,500, Kinzhal's 192 components, and Kalibir's 405. Ukraine is preparing new sanctions against those who help Russia and its war, proposals for restricting supply schemes. What else do we have? The US says up to 5,000 Cubans are fighting in the war against Ukraine, according to Reuters. According to US estimates, between 1,000 and 5,000 are fighting in the Russian forces. Washington has urged its allies to avoid cooperation with Havana at a UN meeting, citing its ties with the Kremlin. Now, I did react somewhat cynically to this. Like, it could well be that 5,000 Cubans are fighting. It could also be that the US wants to badmouth Cuba so they do not have support from allied nations of Ukraine that would therefore be likely allied with the US. If they say, 5,000 Cuban soldiers fighting for Russia against Ukraine, we need to be careful about Cuba, do not vote in alignment with them at the UN. Now, the US famously, particularly the kind of Trumpian administration types, wouldn't be big fans of Cuba, and so they could be looking for an excuse to badmouth Cuba and get votes against them in the UN's UN meetings, general assemblies and whatnot, or resolution votes or whatever it is. So just be warned about that, but that's just my speculation. It could well be that indeed 5,000 Cubans are fighting for the Russians, and that is something the Ukrainians are less able to do. Wouldn't it be great for the Ukrainians if 5,000 Cubans were fighting for them? But alas, that's not the case. Now, in the Leningrad region, this is at Pribytkovo station, the footage of a transfer, probably from the storage base of several units of two S-19 Muster S and two S-5 Hyacinth S self-propelled guns there. According to Exile Nova, equipment is transported by Russian railways in ordinary wagons along the St. Petersburg-Pskov junction in the direction of Estonia and Latvia. So this isn't actually going to Ukraine. What's going on there? Right, China has reportedly stopped supplying Russia with high-precision machine tools. Yay. The import of high-precision equipment from China to Russia has recently become almost impossible. Ildar Nureyev, the owner of the company Tatpromstan, has stated, as according to Anton Gerashenko, quote, China has restricted the supply of high-tech equipment, although this is hardly discussed publicly. Previously, it was possible to obtain machines with an accuracy of 3 to 4 microns, but now it's no longer the case. A special expert license is required for that, Nureyev said. He also added that even exporting already purchased machines from China is accompanied by unpleasant incidents. His company specializes in localizing machine tool complexes based on Chinese technologies, and the businessman views the new restrictions as a sign of Beijing's unwillingness to further develop partnerships with Russian companies. According to China's Customs Service, in August 2025, China's exports to Russia fell by 16.4% year on year, twice the July figure, negative 8.6%. So that's really significant. That could be a good sign of pressure being put on them, I presume, by the US, might also be the EU as well, to not do business so blatantly with the Russians. Now, speaking of Chinese, this is nothing to do with the war in Ukraine per se, but my goodness, it could be. This could be a sign of the times to come. The Chinese have launched thousands of drones from special containers carried by a transformer truck, currently used by a civilian drone light show company. The concept extrapolates to rapid launches of massive military drone swarms. Of course, it's like whenever you watch any kind of sci-fi film, there's always this tension between, oh, look, we developed this thing, this commercial thing, and then the military come along and say, oh, have you? Oh, thank you very much, we'll take that on. And everything's seen in the light of how it can be used and co-opted by the military. Well, that appears to be what's obviously going, not obviously, it appears to be something that could well happen here, as you would expect. I mean, look at this. This is absolutely phenomenal. Look at the precision of all of this and the sheer scale. Imagine these are all autonomous drones that carry some kind of munition on board. And they're all collectively set to hunt out certain things within, I don't know, a 10-kilometer radius from here. Or, 30 kilometers, whatever. And then they've all got a little, I don't know, hand grenade, RPG or whatever. Imagine these are all RPG carrying drones. And you got like 1,000 drones just take off and go and find 1,000 targets. Bish bash bosh. You already know how to look for what you're looking for. Press a button, go. And they all take off. See you later. That is potentially part of the future war. Max25 says, the system set a world record for having more than 11,000 drones in the air at the same time. 11,000 drones. I said 1,000. Now imagine 11,000 larger drones with FPVs, FPV drones with explosives on board. Wow. So anyway, don't get too concerned. Goodness me. Anyway, that's enough from me. I appreciate your support. Thank you so much. I need to rest my voice. My throat is dying. Take care of yourselves, and I will speak to you, no doubt, soon.